Come and grab your seats. This is the last in our summer series, Ordinary People, Extraordinary God. And each week, what we've done, you may have noticed, is to take an attribute of God, something about God, something he does, and find how wonderful that is and how that applies to our lives. Now, as we've already heard, September, the end of August, September is always like a transition time, isn't it? It's always a season of change. Work, school, university, anybody here who is facing a transition of some sort or other? Yeah, a bunch. Or perhaps a challenge, just a change of some sort. Maybe a storm, maybe an uncertainty. How many people would put themselves in that bracket? Must be a whole load more. Now, whether you're facing that now, or recently, or to come, that's kind of one of the givens of life. That uncertainty and change and transition and periods that fluctuate are part of the rhythm of life. I've had loads of those. Most of you have had loads of those. And whether you're a Christian this morning or not a Christian this morning, I would dare to say, the one most important thing you could possibly need to know when life is changing. I'm going to read Psalm 100 to you. If you've got a Bible, you might want to open that up. Psalm 100. It's a very well-known psalm of praise, reflection, rejoicing, but it's all based on the character of God. Because of God, who God is, we can be sure and certain and rejoice. So it goes like this. Shout for joy to the Lord, all the earth. Worship the Lord with gladness. Come before him with joyful songs. Know that the Lord is God. It is he who made us, and we are his. We are his people, the sheep of his pasture. Enter his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. Give thanks to him and praise his name, for the Lord is good, and his love endures forever. His faithfulness continues through all generations. What a wonderful set of words, don't you think? It's absolutely magnificent. Here's a thought. Every human being is a walking contradiction. Every human being, I would say, is a walking contradiction, because each of us is sometimes this and sometimes that. Is that not fair? We lack consistency, at least in points. We're loving and we're unloving. We're gracious and we're ungracious. We're happy and we're sad. We're clever and we're really silly. We're steadfast and we're fickle. We're full of faith and sometimes full of doubting. Every human being is a walking contradiction. But on the other hand, good news, there is no contradiction in God. He is steadfast, constant, unchanging, true, faithful. He is always the fullness of all his perfections. That is our God. If you're not a Christian here this morning, this is the God we are worshiping. This is the God we believe and trust in for very, very good reason. As a Christian leader who once went into school, he would take lessons on a regular basis, and he went to school one time and he wrote at the top of the board the single word, God. And he asked the children for the 30 things that first came to their mind when they read the word God. And no lie about it, he received 30 negative statements. 30 negative statements was all he received. And then he rubbed that out and he put the word the church up. And again, all he received was 30 negatives. And then he asked a question. He asked a dangerous question, really. A question that was a bit flawed as well, really. But he asked this question, what would your ideal God be like? You can see why that's a dangerous and flawed question. But anyway, he asked that question, and here were some of the responses he got. He'd understand me. He wouldn't reject me. He'd be funny. He'd be forgiving. He would always listen. He'd be loving. He would make Arsenal a better team. He'd be into music. Another said, he would bring Jennifer Lopez to me whenever I ask. He wouldn't quit. He wouldn't bitch. He wouldn't gossip. He would always be true. I could always trust him. Now, those students, of course, made some very dubious suggestions as to what God would be like, and many, many things are missing. But what the exercise revealed, perhaps, is that those children had an innate desire for the very God that we worship. The very God that Psalm 100 describes, a God who is perfect, who is loving, who is a giver of joy, who is good and trustful, trustworthy, and all of that forever. And much of what those children said could be summed up in one word from the last verse that we read. It's this: faithful. That God is faithful. Faithful is a word we sometimes use for people and things in the world. So, for example, if you've been to a wedding, you'll be familiar with the line, will you be faithful to her or to him as long as you both shall live? There's a geezer in Yellowstone, I think it is, in the United States, called Old Faithful. This geezer, there's loads of geezers, but this particular geezer, this geezer erupts at regular intervals. Not always the same gap, but someone's done a scientific mathematical study and worked out when it's going to erupt each time. It's called an Old Faithful because it's consistent with its timing. Someone might call their dog a faithful friend. Someone might have a work colleague who's been there for 40 years. They say, what a faithful servant they've been of this company. Well, Christians love to talk about the attributes of God, those qualities and characteristics and perfections that make God God. Things like he's holy, he's almighty, he's transcendent, he's above everything, he's immanent, he's in things and with us, he's creator, he's eternal, he's self-sufficient. But if you ask me, as well as all of those, if you ask me, what comes to my mind when I think about the attributes of God, very quickly, always will come to my mind, faithful. God is faithful, which means that he's true and good and right in everything that he says and does. It means he has never told an untruth. He has never not been able to deliver what he says. He means what he says and he does what he says. It means that he is entirely reliable. It means that he is unchanging, that he is completely trustworthy and dependable. He cannot fail. One writer said this: God's faithfulness means that God will always do what he has said and fulfill what he has promised. Another defined it this way: the faithfulness of God is his trustworthiness, a commitment to keep his promises to his people. Take another psalm, Psalm 33. It begins like this: sing joyfully to the Lord, you righteous. It is fitting for the upright to praise him. Praise the Lord with the harp. Make music to him on the 10-string lyre. Sing to him a new song. Play skillfully and shout for joy. For the word of the Lord is right and true. He is faithful in all he does. The Lord loves righteousness and justice. The earth is full of his unfailing love. Now, notice in that psalm that hanging around the words in verse 4, he is faithful in all he does, are these words: the word of the Lord is right and true. That's what it means that he's faithful. The Lord loves righteousness and justice. That's what it means that he is faithful. The earth is full of his unfailing love. That's what it means that he is faithful. The faithfulness, the dependability, the trustworthiness of God is a theme that winds its way through the entire Bible, particularly in the Psalms. You, Lord, are a compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness. The Lord is good, and his love endures forever. His faithfulness continues through all generations. The Lord is righteous in all his ways and faithful in all he does. And this confidence in God's reliability, his truthfulness, his faithfulness, has long been an anchor for Christians, particularly when facing challenge and change and difficult circumstances. One writer says this, speaking about Christians who were facing enormous trouble in the first century. He says, if I'm hiding in the catacombs and 3 of my best friends have just been thrown to the lions or burned at the stake or crucified and set ablaze as torches at one of Emperor Nero's garden parties, these things really happened. The symbol that most encourages me in my faith is the anchor. It was a symbol of Christian faith and hope in the early centuries. When I see it, he carries on, I'm reminded that Jesus is my anchor. I was very, very glad once that I had an anchor point. The time when I did my one and only abseil. And it will remain my one and only abseil. In my first year of my 4-year PE teaching degree, way back, some crazy lecturer sent us on a week of outdoor pursuits in the Welsh hills. For some people, that was wonderful. For me, it was a nightmare. It involved things like potholing. Has anybody done potholing? It's mental. You literally get put in a hole that you can just about squeeze through. It's terrifying. I was terrified. Things like canoeing. You think, so what? We were made to capsize, and when I capsized my canoe, I actually thought I was going to die. Seriously. I could not. You sat in the canoe, and you had this cover to keep you from getting splashed when you were canoeing. How'd you do canoeing? Anyway, whatever way I can't even remember. It's wiped from my memory, that bit. And this cover is all very well, but when you capsize, obviously you have to remove the cover to get out. And I could not get it off. And I was upside down, and I was absolutely terrified. And I only just got it off before I lost my breath. It was awful. And then, as if that's not all too bad, they made us abseil. And it's like this crazy person for whom it's just second nature just says, stand on the edge of this cliff, and just lean back. That's the most unnatural thing in the world to do when you're standing on the top of a cliff. And so I lean back, and I've just about managed to do it, and I'm pretty pathetic, and I've got no guts about me, obviously, at all. And then, halfway down, this cagoule that I was wearing, with its tie-up thing, gets absolutely knotted in the figure of 8 thing. And I am literally stranded halfway down this cliff. And I cannot get myself out for a whole 5 minutes. And I thought, what on earth is going to happen here? Somehow I eventually got it out. Anyway, I was very glad in that moment to have an anchor point. That the ropes I was going over from were firmly rooted in the ground which at least gave me a measure of comfort in my distress. But more commonly, you might think of a ship's anchor. What's a ship's anchor? Well, of course, it's a very heavy weight that grips to the seabed in order to keep the ship steady, especially in a storm. They're 10 to 20 feet long on a cruise liner, weigh between 10 and 20 tons. They are massive. Now, the one time in the New Testament that the term anchor is used metaphorically is in Hebrews chapter 6, which is almost certainly where the Christian symbol came from this passage in Hebrews chapter 6. Scattered Christians to whom the writer is writing are being tempted to give up on Jesus. And he uses the anchor, as we'll see, as a metaphor for a certain hope despite the storms that are going on around you. So he writes this in Hebrews chapter 6. He's been saying it is impossible for God to lie. Why is that? Because he's faithful. It's impossible for God to lie. And then goes on to say, we who have fled to take hold of the hope set before us may be greatly encouraged. We have this hope as an anchor for the soul, firm and secure. It enters the inner sanctuary behind the curtain where our forerunner, Jesus, has entered on our behalf. He's using this obvious image of an anchor, a ship's anchor, and saying, our hope in Jesus is like that. But rather than being embedded in the seabed, it's like Jesus himself is our anchor, and he is embedded in the heavens. He's lived, he's died, he's raised, he's ascended, and he being in the heavens, for certain that he is there, is like an anchor for our souls, for us to hold onto. Now, we all face storms. We all face what the Bible calls trials of many kinds. And I don't know about you, but every now and again I meet someone who life is genuinely complicated, but it's like they're all at sea, we might say. A bit like you imagine a beach ball on the ocean. It's just going to get tossed around wherever the wind's going, wherever the waves are going. It's just going to be completely tossed all over the place. And some people will try in a storm to trust their ability to get through it. Other people will have some sort of vague positivity that, well, things will probably turn out all right in the end. Or other people go on the control way. If things are out of control, I'm going to grab onto and control whatever I can out of anxiety. But the Christian, at such times, has an anchor secured to God's faithfulness. And that is completely and utterly different. A confidence that God can be trusted. That even if I don't know some things about why this is happening and what I'm going to do there and how's this all going to work out, there's all sorts of things I don't know. There are things I do know, which is that God is good, that God is loving, that God hasn't forgotten me, that he is faithful. And the Christian has an anchor for their soul at all times, and especially when the storms come. So illness comes. And let's be honest, the Christian is not someone who simply wanders along chirpily. Oh, well, never mind. We'll be all right. Christians should never deal in trivial cheerfulness, as if real things don't really hurt. If you've been a Christian for any length of time, real things really hurt, don't they? And real things really do unsettle. The Christian way is not to bury your head in the sand and pretend, and nor is it to try and poke your head in the clouds and forget it and just be la-di-da-di-da, everything's lovely. Now, the Christian deals with real challenges with the real certainty of God's faithfulness. And so illness strikes. A wave, a storm comes and it threatens to wash me over the side. And I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what to do. And it doesn't seem like anyone's really doing anything for me. But we have an anchor for our souls. And where it's placed, it's like it's hidden. The writer to the Hebrews says, it's Jesus who is our anchor. He is our hope. And it's not like you can see him and say, oh, right, there he is. He's right there. No, he's gone into the heavens. But he's for certain there, isn't he? Is Jesus not lived, died, risen, and ascended, and living today? Yes, he is. And he is the anchor for my soul when illness strikes. And I'm still in the waves, and it's not like it's all serene. I'm being tossed around here. Or you've got financial difficulty. Well, it's not like, never mind, the Lord knows. No, it's really stormy, and it's really difficult, and I really don't know how I'm going to pay my bills, but I have an anchor. And the anchor is not my ability to make things work or for me to control stuff. It's knowing that Jesus lives, and he does know, and he does care, and there is an anchor for my soul in the heavens. Or stuff's going really bad at work. And you just don't know what to do. You don't know if you're going to keep your job. And you just don't know how to deal with those anxieties. And it's really stormy. Again, let's not pretend. But I have an anchor for my soul, which is the faithfulness of God, because he will never let me down. In fact, he cannot let me down, which doesn't mean necessarily that it's all going to be lovely in the end, because Jesus never promises loveliness in the end in this life, though he blesses us in a million ways. But he does promise to be faithful. And even when I pass through the valley of the shadow of death, I have an anchor for my soul. And I do not know how it's all going to work out. And you do not know how it's going to work out. And I haven't been there yet, obviously. And maybe you haven't either. But I know in that moment, there is one in the heavens who will never let go of me. And it is an anchor for my soul that he will see me through the other side. When I used to walk around Torbay on the coastal paths around there, you often see lots of benches, of course, with plaques on them. You know, in memory of so-and-so, or gone but not forgotten, or whatever. There's one bench on the Torbay coastline that has this on it: God knows best. That's really painful. Someone has trusted the faithfulness of God enough to know that even though their loved one, I suspect it looks like it may have been a child or someone, their loved one has died, they are able to have an anchor. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with any crisis in life if you don't have an anchor? And this person has clearly had such a strong sense that God is faithful, and it's proven as an anchor for their soul that even in such a situation, they are able to say, God knows best. You might still be left with, God, why? And there's no answer coming back to that. All sorts of things I don't know, but I do know God knows best, and he is faithful. It is an anchor for our souls. And you see, you can trust what he says because of who he is. What matters is not simply the promises, but the attributes of the one who makes those promises, yes? So if I said to you, apart from throwing me out, if I said to you, I will never leave you or forsake you, I might have some weird Messiah complex. But you think, Tim, that's just stupid. You can't deliver that. Or if I said, I will provide for all your needs. Again, you'd say, Tim, you're crazy. And that's a ridiculous statement. The promise is only as good as the promise maker. And so God's promises can be trusted because he, the promise maker, is faithful. And that is our anchor. And so, because he always does what he says, I will believe him when he says he will forgive all who come to him in repentance. Because he keeps his promises, I believe what he said about providing for all my needs. Because he cannot lie, I believe him when he says he will never leave me or forsake me. Because he is completely dependable, I believe him when he said that in all things he works for the good of those who love him. When my past or my culture leaves me wondering if I'm worth anything, anybody face that? I will believe his word that says that I am wanted and accepted and loved by him. And because he is faithful, I believe that he will deliver on his promise to see me through death, to be with him forever. So back to Psalm 100. Shout for joy to the Lord, all the earth. Worship the Lord with gladness. Come before him with joyful songs. Know that the Lord is God. It is he who made us, and we are his. We are his people, the sheep of his pasture. Enter his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. Give thanks to him and praise his name. There's lots of invitations to worship and thankfulness there, isn't there? Verse 5. Why? For the Lord is good, and his love endures forever. His faithfulness continues through all generations. Anyone here facing a transition? Anyone here facing a challenge, a change, uncertainty, a storm? Here's the one thing you most need to hear. God is faithful. And if you are not a Christian here this morning, let me just appeal to you on this basis. You are missing out on the most secure anchor that there possibly is. The reality of the life and death and resurrection and ascension and second return of Jesus Christ, the Son of God, the King of the universe. And today, maybe you want to put your trust in him for the first time and take the first step to say, Jesus, I need an anchor like you that is utterly and completely dependable. In the mysteries and confusions of life, we cling to this. God is faithful. That is the anchor that my soul needs. Can we just put verse 5 back up as the band come up? I wonder if you would read this with me. And we're going to sing a song in a moment. Verse 5. Ready? For the Lord is good, and his love endures forever. His faithfulness continues through all generations. Again, for the Lord is good, and his love endures forever. His faithfulness continues through all generations. Maybe you'd just like to close your eyes a moment. Where does this land for you? Where is maybe God inviting you to reaffirm your trust in his faithfulness? that what he says in his word, he will do, that he cannot lie, that in all your changes and so on, he is trustworthy. What we're going to do is sing this song. And I'd like to invite you to respond. It's just between you and God. But I know for me, just doing something very simple really helps me to make a statement to myself and before God. So as we sing this song, my invitation to you is simply where you are to stand when you're ready to do so. Maybe you are facing something really uncertain. You might want to stand and say, God, I'm holding on to this anchor. In fact, I know this anchor is holding on to me. He's holding on to us, more than we're holding on to him. Lord, I reaffirm my trust in this anchor for my soul, that you are faithful. Maybe you're not facing a crisis. Maybe you'd just like to reaffirm your trust in God this morning. I'm not trying to pressure you to stand, but I don't know, it just helps me to do something. And that's the simplest thing I can think of asking you to do. So when you're ready and as we sing, enjoy the truth of this song about God's faithfulness, that he will never fail. And just why don't you, when you're ready, just stand and apply what we said to your situation.